Following is a multimedia presentation that is a supplement to the Sustainable Country Living book. The topic is the food grid, seed saving. This dovetails with Chapter 29 in the book, Food Grid Gardening, Seed Saving. Seed saving is an important thing to understand if you're trying to be sustainable from year to year with gardening. Yes, you can go buy seeds at the store and plant them and have a garden, but in order to be able to not have to buy seeds when times are tough, a person needs to know which kinds of plants can be saved as seeds and how to go about it. That's the point of this presentation. Paul Gauci is a world-known person who came up with the concept of Back to Eden gardening. Here is his advice about seed saving.
You told us that you were saving your own seed and that it was superior to buying seeds from any company. Are you still saving your own seeds?
Yes, for sure. Because my seed's better than what I can buy. I'll just give you an example. I bought some cucumber seeds from an organic, good seed company, and in the row I planted, only 9 came up. I'm thinking, like, what's up with this? I collected my seed and every one came up. Even though they're organic, they're still not growing in soil this good.
And what tips do you have for people? Do they have to worry about cross-pollination, or how do you successfully save seed after its own kind?
Yeah, cross-pollination is a serious issue. If you want clean seed, make sure you're not growing any other variety but that one, because cross-pollination happens and it really affects seeds.
Paul Gauci's advice about seed saving is that Paul's own saved seeds are better, he believes, than buying seeds. Cross-pollination is something to understand and be careful about. Melissa K. Morris hosts a YouTube channel called Modern Homesteading, and she'll explain the history of hybrid seeds.
So the first time that we attempted technically seed-saving zucchini did not turn out so well. The zucchini actually was a volunteer. So I had some zucchini that we had planted and it just got caught in the frost and it wasn't any good and it was overripe and we just left it in the garden. So the next year, those seeds actually sprouted and began growing very early in the springtime, which was great. I didn't have to plant that zucchini. And it was beautiful. It was really great, dark zucchini. Picked it, super excited. But it was so bitter that you couldn't put it in a cake. It was completely inedible. We had cattle at the time. The cows wouldn't even eat it. The livestock wouldn't eat it. It was gross. And the problem is that it was hybrid seed from the store. And I didn't understand at that time the significance of trying to seed save from something that's a hybrid versus an heirloom seed. So I'm about to give you a quick history lesson. All of our seeds and everything that we have been heirloom until about the 1940s. Now, when I'm saying hybrid, when you take an heirloom seed that has been standardized, so it's been seed saved for multiple, generations and years, and provided that you don't have cross-pollination going on, every time you plant that seed, it grows true to form. So it comes back and tastes and looks and behaves the exact same way. That's what we're talking about with heirloom. Now, I can take an heirloom and decide I want to create a new species and do pollination, and that would be a hybrid F1 the first time I cross them. But when I'm talking about hybrid in the scope of this is when you're going to the store and you're buying hybrid seed packets. So in about the 1940s, you had a lot of seed companies started creating hybrid seeds where they would take some heirlooms and they would cross them to make a very specific type of tomato or zucchini or whatever the plant was. And then they would ship them out. Now, these are not the same as genetically modified seeds. Please don't, there's a lot of confusion around those. They're not the same thing. But the problem is if you try to seed save from those hybrid seeds that come from the store, then you get what happened with me with these zucchini. They don't come back true to the parent, meaning what you planted and you're harvesting that year and you save the seeds from, what grows the following year is not the exact same. They can look different, and oftentimes they taste really bad, often, especially with your zucchini. And the reason in the 1940s they did this is we had the boom of big agriculture, and it was really the first time in much of history in our lifespan, not my lifespan, but all of human history, I should say, where you had big, huge supermarkets and food was being growing and shipped, hundreds and if not thousands of miles from where it was actually harvested. And so they needed food in varieties that would have a long shelf life, that would ship well, and also looked good, because they discovered we're kind of fickle. When we're shopping, we want the tomato that's the most round and it's the most perfect looking. We don't want the lumpy, bumpy, and kind of misshapen tomatoes. And so they would pick different strains of tomatoes that had those characteristics. And that's how we got a lot of our hybrid breeds. And they would also pick ones that were perhaps disease resistant so that they could get a higher yield when we're doing this big type of agriculture. So that's really why we have hybrid seeds, the ones that we have today. But many of you probably went through this spring during the COVID pandemic, and garden seed was something that was hard to come by. So if you begin seed saving, then you don't have to worry about that, and you always have a supply of seeds to be able to grow your own food. But you really need to start with heirloom or open pollinated, sometimes they'll say heritage, seeds to begin with.
According to Melissa K. Morris, all seeds were heirloom up until the 1940s. Then there was a boom of agriculture in America with the advent of grocery stores and supermarkets. So store-bought hybrids became popular. Seed saving will help when supply chain issues happen during events such as the pandemic. Melissa K. Morris continues by talking about avoiding cross-pollination.
Now here I have some of my radishes. Now usually when a lot of our cooler weather plants, this is a daikon radish, broccoli, anything in our brassica family like that, begins to bolt, we're really disappointed, because when it starts to bolt, it means it's really no longer edible for the most part. It gets bitter, it goes to seed, and it stops growing. However, this is a really good thing when you're after doing seed saving. So these are my daikon radish, and they bolt, which means they throw up this flower head, and this flower head becomes these little pods. So again, we need these to fully develop, because inside these pods, this is going to be our radish seed. So we're going to leave these in the ground and let these fully develop and begin to dry out, and this is what is going to become our radish seed. So all is not lost if you have things that begin to bolt. You do need to leave them in the ground so that they fully develop. But you do need to know if it's a root crop or any crop, if it's cross-pollinator or self-pollinator. So for your radishes will not cross-pollinate with other species, but they will cross-pollinate within the radish species. So if I have other types of radish that we're growing and bolting right now, they would cross. I don't actually have any other types of radish, and I'm far enough away from my neighbors' gardens that I don't really need to worry about that. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're growing multiple types of radish and they're in blossom or bolting at the same time, they will cross-pollinate. So you can either do where you're just growing one kind at a time, which is what I'm doing this year right now for the purposes of seed saving, or you could put some type of netting over them. There's different bags and things that you can put over to stop cross-pollination, but really the easiest and the simplest and what I do is just grow one at a time. So here I've got my daikon radish, which will then be my seed for next year.
He explains that plants bolt after the fruit and then they go to seed. The process is the plant produces the vegetables, then the flowers come out, and then the seed pods come out. To save the seeds, you need to allow the plants to mature in the ground. Cross-pollinating is an issue, and she gave an example of radishes. You need to avoid the bolting of a plant at the same time as other plants of the same kind. You can have more than one kind of radish, for instance, but you need to allow only one of them to bolt at a time, otherwise they'll cross-pollinate. Melissa K. Morris continues explaining about saving the best of the best.
You want to look through the plants, and this is for any time that you're seed saving, but especially true for me this year. There were 2 plants, and I had them marked. So it was this one right here at the base, and then I had one on the other end coming in. These ones grew the quickest. So not only did they sprout and germinate the fastest of the ones that did, but they were actually about 2 feet taller than all the rest of the plants were when they first began climbing up this trellis. So you want to mark the plants that sprout the fastest, that begin to produce the fastest, because you're going to get more of a harvest off of them, right? The ones that are disease-free, the ones that you like the flavors the best of, basically the best of the best is what we're after when we're seed saving. So it's something that's important that you want to take note of as things are growing, and that you want to seed save off of those plants. Now, as far as genetic diversity, you definitely want to seed save then more than just 1 or 2 plants. You know, you really want to seed save from quite a few plants, even though it's within, you know, they're all the same. These are all a black Cherokee bean, but I want to seed save from several different plants. You don't want to ever pick just one, but you do want to pick the best of the best to seed save from. And this is true really for anything that you're seed saving, not just beans, self-pollinating versus cross-pollinating. Any of your seed saving plants, it's always the ones that are absolute best and disease-free.
She explains that saving seeds from the fastest growing, higher producing, and disease-free plants is the best. You need to save seeds from several of the best plants rather than just 1 or 2. Gardener Scott is a master gardener, and he will explain how to save seeds for spinach.
Spinach is a bit unique with the plants in your garden in that the seeds will develop all the way up the stalk at all of these leaf junctions. This doesn't even look like a spinach plant anymore, but it's covered with seeds. The seeds grow all along the stem, and as the plant ages, the leaves will start to turn brown, and then all the seeds that are growing along the stem will start to dry. And this is the point that we want to start thinking about harvest. It takes time and hot weather to get seeds from spinach because it's the warm temperatures that cause these plants to bolt. I've started seeds of spinach in fall, grown all winter long, and had 0 bolting. But if you sow these seeds in spring and then grow them into the summer, you can expect that the plants will bolt. They'll set seed, and that'll give you the opportunity to begin harvesting in late summer or early fall. And I begin the harvest with a cardboard box or a paper bag. I use these paper-based products like a cardboard box or a paper bag because from this point forward I want these seeds to be as dry as possible. And this allows for airflow and will allow the seeds to continue to dry. If I were to put them into a plastic bag or a sealed jar, well, some of the stems and some of the leaves are still green. So there's enough moisture that it could cause some of the seeds to develop mold and maybe even rot. By being open and in a paper product that can breathe, they'll continue to dry. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll take some pruning shears and I'll start collecting this seed. I'm focusing on dried stems and dried seeds at this point, and just either breaking them off, because many will just come off in your hand, or cutting the thicker stems and putting them in the box. There are so many seeds here, I don't need to worry about some of these that are still green. They can continue growing and maturing and give me seeds later in the season. It's okay to spread this out over time and only harvest the seeds that have dried on the plants. And I think that's important because if you were to harvest a green stem like this, well, these seeds aren't mature yet. So wait until they dry, cut off the dried stems with the dried seeds, and you can be more assured of the viability and future spinach.
Gardner Scott explains that spinach seeds develop all the way up the stem, that you should harvest only dry seeds. Spinach planted in the spring can result in bolting in the fall. Use a cardboard box or a paper bag to store all the seeds until they're completely dry. Only harvest seeds that have dried on the plant if possible. Scott continues to explain how to separate the spinach seeds.
Once I bring the spinach seeds back into the house, I just let them sit in the box for a week or two and continue to dry. Now, you can go ahead and take these seeds and put them right back into the garden for a fall crop, and they'll even grow well into the winter. But I'm collecting these seeds for spring, and so that's what I'll show you. I start with getting a container, and I've gone ahead and marked the name of the seed on the container. It's a good idea to put down the variety, what type of seed it is, and then be sure you mark the year that you've collected the seed. So with my container, I'm using a glass jar and a paper, newspaper, and then a clean sheet of white paper. I'm ready to start collecting these seeds. It's pretty easy because these are among the bigger seeds that you're going to collect. So you can easily see what is a seed and what is a stem and what is a dried leaf. And I just begin by breaking up these little clusters. And remember, the seeds grow in clusters along the stem. So I'm trying to break up as many of these clusters as I can find and just let them fall on the white paper. And along the way, just to keep it a little tidier, I'll separate out the leaves so that I'll try to leave as many seeds as possible on the paper. And because the seeds are dry and the stalk is dry, it's very easy. You just break off the clusters and let them fall on the sheet of paper. And it's pretty clear what is a seed and what isn't. And so I'll try to keep the stalk intact, separating out the leaves as much as possible. That helps with the cleanup. And then once I have all of the seeds removed from the stalk, now we can go ahead and talk about how we're going to store these seeds. And so right now, I'm just going to go ahead and try to clean up as many of these leaves from the paper as possible, leaving behind all these little clusters. The bigger pieces of leaf are easy to remove. There will be some small pieces left behind. And so one of the ways to clean up some of those smaller pieces is just to blow. The bigger seed will tend to stay behind, and so some of the smaller, lighter leaf pieces you can just blow right off the paper. And so now I'm just trying to get as many of the leaf pieces and the stem pieces clear of this paper. There's still a lot of very small particles that remain. When I blow, many of it does blow off, but it's still difficult to get rid of all the little pieces. So what I do is I take a strainer or a kitchen sieve, and I'll go ahead and with the bigger pieces off the paper now, I'll go ahead and pour it into this. So now I have a clean sheet of paper again. And then by shaking, I can shake out a lot of those little particles. And you can see how much the little pieces fall through. And then I'll go ahead and pour that little bit of chaff off and then put the seeds back onto the clean paper again. There's still some stalks and leaves that need to be separated, but it's much easier with all that little stuff gone. And I really want to try to store the seeds so that it's just seed, so we don't have a lot of litter It's a personal preference. You can easily just stop at this point and put the seeds into your jar or envelope or whatever container you want to use. But all this extra chaff takes up space, and I don't think it looks as nice when you save your seeds and you've got a lot of the junk left behind. So I'm cleaning up as much of that junk as possible. And then with these clusters of seeds, now I can start breaking them apart, because there's a lot of little seeds that are clustered into these big chunky pieces. And so by separating out these clusters, now I can get back to that basic seed. Because when you sow the seed, you don't want to sow a cluster of seeds, or you might get 6 or 8 or 10 spinach plants. You want to be sowing each of these individual seeds. So that's what we're doing at this step.
So he explains that you allow them to dry in the house for a week or two. Label the containers with which variety it is and the year that the seeds were harvested. Use a sheet of white paper to work on and break up the seed clusters. Pick out the large non-seed items, then blow out the small seed items. Use a kitchen strainer to remove the remaining little pieces. Gardener Scott now explains how to store spinach seeds.
And so now, with these clusters broken apart and separated into individual seeds, I can repeat the previous step after removing a few more of the leaves that appear. Sometimes leaves or a little bit of stalk will be attached to the clusters that you didn't see before. So I'll pour this back into the strainer and repeat that previous step, getting out a lot of those little pieces that were stuck and left behind. This looks pretty clean and ready to save. And then we just pour it into the jar. Looking at how much seed I got in just this one stalk, I'm estimating over 100 seeds in this first effort. And so you can see how this is a great opportunity to save your seeds and never have to buy spinach seeds again. Now, this Bloomsdale long-standing spinach is an heirloom variety. So that means I can save these seeds and continue to grow this variety pretty much from here on out. I never need to buy these seeds again. By just allowing the seeds to grow into a plant and allowing that plant to bolt and set flower and seed, I'll have seeds for the rest of my gardener career.
Gardener Scott recommends storing in a jar, and the seeds can be saved over and over and never have to buy seeds again. Farmer's Country Kitchen had a guest named Brenda Reynolds from Kentucky, and she discusses organic seeds versus Kentucky heirloom seeds.
What is an heirloom seed for those who don't know?
It's a seed that's been handed down from generation to generation, and you take like any of your beans or anything, when you plant it this year, then next year you're going to get the same thing.
So it's not a hybrid?
No, a hybrid is a seed that has been taken, they've taken two different types of seeds and cross-pollinated them. That's your hybrid seed.
And then you can't, well, if you took the seeds from those,
you won't get the same thing as you planted the year before.
So this is very valuable to have if you want to continue and hand on. And some of these things have been handed down. Red Bloody Butcher, 105 days, originally from Virginia and grown since 1845. Wow. Great for grinding into flour or cornmeal, and can be eaten as corn on the cob.
As long as it's in the milk stage, you know, before it gets too hard.
Grown since 1845.
This one here is the turkey crawl bean, and the way the story goes with this, that someone killed a turkey and the beans were in the crawl of the turkey, and they took the beans out and planted them.
Wow.
And that's how they got their name, turkey crawl bean.
All right, now everybody talks about greasy beans. Why do they call them greasy beans, and what history do they have here in
It's
Kentucky?
because the way they look, the bean itself has got like a shiny look to it. A lot of your beans are kind of rough, fuzzy feeling, but no, they're real greasy looking. And of course you've got your white ones and your brown ones. They don't get real big, but they're really packed with flavor. They're real popular in Kentucky. But now a lot of people think that your organic seed are heirloom seed, but they're not. The organic part has nothing to do with the seed. It's just how it's been growing. They've not used chemicals or anything on it. Like these right here, the ones that I have growed and saved, they're organic heirlooms. Because I don't use chemicals on my food.
Right.
Brenda explained heirloom seeds are passed down from generation to generation. Some heirloom seeds have been passed down for hundreds of years. Hybrid is a cross-pollinated plant, and the string beans that look greasy are called greasy beans because they have a shiny look. Organic seeds are not the same as heirloom seeds. Brenda further explains how to dry and store beans.
All right, let's talk about, it's the end of the season.
Okay.
And you are collecting your beans. Now, most of them, I know what you do with them. They end up in a can.
Always save seed.
Always save seed. How do you do that? How do you save the seed and get it to this dry stage and make sure that you have something, a viable seed for next year?
Okay. Normally what you would do, you leave them on your bean vines until the hull turns brown. And then you pick them and just hull them out. But if we have a real rainy fall, I pick my beans when they start turning yellow, and I put them in a building on the screen and let them dry there. Because if you leave them out on the bean vine in a lot of rain, they'll sprout in the hull.
That ain't good.
No, you lose your seed.
And there you go. That's all you do. Now, what about a tomato? Now, what about if you have a plant that's very moist?
Well, now when your tomato is ripe and ready to eat, you collect the seed then.
How do you get the film off of them and dry them?
It's recommended that you ferment them, but I have found an easier way around that. That or a little miniature pressure washer. And I just spray the seeds off good, and then it does the same thing as fermenting them, but in a whole lot less time.
And then after you get everything
I
off, do
just
you
put them
on
out
a
on
screen?
a paper plate or something like that, and let them dry.
And how long do you let them dry before you?
I probably let mine dry a week. You
And
can
then-
tell by feeling of them.
And then you put them in a little bag, put them in the fridge, mark them down. Obviously, it's important to.
Yeah, I keep records of all of them. I store mine in the freezer.
So is this how you store them? Just in a little freezer bag?
You can. Or
And
you
just-
can put them in a canning jar. But for me, it saves space to put them in bags.
Brenda recommends leaving the seeds on the stalk until dry. But if the weather doesn't afford that, pick them before the rain and dry them inside. The time to save tomato seeds is when the tomatoes are ready to eat. Some seeds, like tomatoes, have a slimy coating. Removing the coating can be done by fermenting in water for a couple of days. It can also be done by using a small pressure washer. Then, spread seeds on a paper plate to dry for a week. Store in a paper envelope, Ziploc bag, or a jar, and put it in a freezer or a dry, cool, dark place. Shani has been a professional horticulturist for many years, and she's going to explain understanding different types of plants.
So let's talk about the plant life cycles. First, we have annuals, and these are going to sprout, grow, make seed, and die within the span of just 1 year. Some popular annuals would be lettuce or cucumbers. Then we've got biennials. Biennials are going to take 2 years to complete their life cycle. In their first year, they're going to sprout and grow. Then they're going to go dormant over the winter. They're going to return the next season for their flowering phase, and then they will finally die out. Some popular garden biennials would be carrots and beets. Finally, we have perennials. And perennials are going to sprout and grow in that first season, then they're going to go dormant, and then going to come back the following season. And perennials can do this over an incredible length of time. There are short-lived perennials, think things like asparagus, which could live a few years, up to 20 years. And then we have long-lived perennials, think ancient redwood trees that are living for hundreds, thousands of years. Next, we're going to talk about plant pollination. This is how plants go from flower to producing seed. So first up, we've got the self-pollinating plants. These are the crops that have perfect or complete flowers, meaning each individual flower contains both the male and female parts required to reproduce. They don't require any outside influence in order to make seeds for saving in the future. Some examples of self-pollinating plants would be tomatoes and beans. And these crops are the easiest for beginner seed savers. And then there are plants that require cross-pollination. There are plants that have separate male and female flowers contained on one plant. Examples of this would be a squash plant or a corn plant. These will need a little intervention across their pollen, but they are on one single plant, and they're called monoecious plants. When we're saving seeds on the cross-pollinated crops, we're going to employ things like making an isolation distance to block pollen, or even manually bagging blooms. This is more of an expert level, intensive method of seed saving. So today we're really going to cover the self-pollinating crops because those are a little more beginner friendly. So let's break down the difference between heirloom open pollinated seeds and hybrid seeds. Heirloom open pollinated seeds breed true. This means that their genetics have been stabilized. What that practically means for you gardeners is that when you save the seeds on, say, a red ruffled heirloom tomato, and you plant those seeds the next season, fruit that you'll get on that plant will be identical or very similar to the fruit that you saved the seeds on. So the fruit looks like its parent plants. Now, with hybrid seeds, those are two genetically different parents who have been crossed using controlled pollination. This means that hybrid seeds are typically genetically unstable, and you really can't breed them true or get the same result when you save the seeds of a hybrid plant. When we save the seeds of a hybrid tomato, what you get the next year is going to be a random cross of genetics, and it's often so random that the fruit is fairly undesirable.
Fanny identified there are plant cycles. Annual plants have a one-year life cycle, such as lettuce and cucumbers. Biennials have 2 years, such as carrots and beets. And perennials are year after year, like asparagus. Self-pollinating plants are like tomatoes and beans, and cross-pollinating plants are like squash and corn. Heirloom and open-pollinated seeds are ones that can be planted the next year and produce the same plant. Hybrid plants, on the other hand, are crossbred, and they're not going to result in the same kind of plant exactly the next year, and it may not even be editable. Janie further explains how to process tomato seeds.
So you got out to the garden, you saved those seeds. The next question is, how do you store them? We just have to meet 3 important criteria. You need cool, dark, dry conditions. I keep my seeds in a glass container, ensuring that they're airtight. And these are some jicama seeds that I saved recently. I make sure to put a silica packet in just to pull out any extra moisture that might be hiding in there. But this is going to make sure that they stay super dry. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, our hands-on seed saving tutorial. There are 2 major methods for seed saving. We have dry seed saving and wet seed saving. Dry seed saving consists of simply allowing your seeds to mature and dry on the plant and hand harvesting them. This is a butterfly pea plant. I just allow the pods to mature and dry right on the plant, and then I hand harvest them. It's as simple as that. They're ready to go into storage. In dry seed saving, hand picking is great if you're a home gardener or if you're not saving too many seeds. But if you're saving a large quantity, or if you expect a lot of rain and humidity in the upcoming weeks and you don't think your plants are going to dry in time for the first frost, you can actually cut or pull those plants up, hang them upside down, and allow the pods to finish drying from there. The second method of seed saving is wet seed saving. This is essential for crops where the seeds are encapsulated in a wet fruit. Today we're going to save seeds on this ruffly red tomato. And seed saving tomatoes is a breeze. What we're going to do is cut that fruit, and we're going to just smush, trying to get mostly just seeds into the jar. And of course, you're going to get some skin, you're going to get some pulp in there, but that's totally fine. And you'll notice that tomato seeds are surrounded by this sort of jelly-like substance. That is going to make the seeds come together, and it's going to inhibit germination because the tomato doesn't want to start sprouting its seeds too early inside the fruit. It wants to pass those seeds on for next generation. So there is a slight germination inhibitor encapsulated in that gel coating around the tomato seed. And that is why we're going to do a fermentation for these seeds. We're gonna leave this jar on our countertop out of direct sunlight for 3 to 5 days. Fermentation has benefits. It's going to break down potential diseases that the seeds may be harboring. Tomatoes have developed a mechanism for preventing their seeds from prematurely sprouting. And this is a natural germination inhibitor found around each tomato seed. And your seeds are going to sprout more vigorously and more readily when you plant them next spring. Okay, this is day 4 of the tomato seeds fermenting, and it is time to separate them and get them dried off. Very likely you'll see a layer of mold on the top of your tomato slurry. It's no big deal, we're gonna scoop it right off. You've probably also noticed that some of your tomato seeds are floating at the top, and most of them are sunk at the bottom. The ones at the bottom are viable, which means they will germinate. The ones that have floated at the top actually are dead and not going to sprout. So we're gonna scoop off the mold and the floaty seeds. So I'm gonna take my tomato seed slurry, I'm going to pour it into a larger glass jar and fill it with water to help the separation. I'm gonna watch as all of my viable seeds are sinking to the bottom and any of the floaters are getting scooped off. Next, I'm going to pour all this junk off the top while I carefully make sure not to pour out the seeds at the bottom. Once again, I'm going to add more water and I'm going to allow the seeds to sink to the bottom, adding a bit more fresh water so that I can keep pouring off any of the dead seeds, the mold, and extra tomato skin lying around. Now, all I have left are the viable seeds. So I'm gonna pour them into a mesh strainer. And then I'm just gonna dry them in room temperature out of direct sunlight for a few days. This is the final dry down that your seeds are going to need before you put them into long-term storage.
Shani explained that store the seeds in a cool, dark, dry place and include a silicone pack to absorb any moisture. Dry seed saving and wet seed saving are 2 different methods, and fermented is another process for processing tomato seeds. Chad Cruiser has a website called Health and Homestead, and he will explain drying seeds.
When they're green, they're not ready. They're getting ready. They are actually ready when they are brown. And at this point, probably 80 to 90% of these ones over here are dried, and these over here actually, I would say not even near that, probably 10, not even, yeah, maybe 10, 15% are. So you can see some will go faster than others, and you could gather up, I mean, I could just, if I saw really bad weather coming, I could probably just uproot these few plants right here, bring them inside, and let these continue their process of drying out and out here. And then later on, I could actually pluck these out. And then the process is very simple, like I said, but do your best to get seeds from as many of the plants as you can and plant those seeds from different plants each year. And that way, or at least save seeds until the year that you're going to actually save seed again, and make sure that you have a diversity planted so that year you can also do the same thing. So seed planting is super fulfilling, and think about it, it's one of the best investments you could make in your entire life. You think about it, now, you know, people put money in the stock market and these kind of things, and they go up, they go down, and that does happen with seeds too. You have good years and you have bad years, but the reality is this is something that you can buy one time and have these seeds for the rest of your life.
Chad explained that harvesting seeds when dry on the plant is best. Diversity seed saving is important. If you just take seeds from one plant or 2 plants, some of that genetic important information is going to get lost over time. So you want to gather seeds from the same plant, but in different plants in the row. It's a great investment in the future to learn how to do seed saving. Chad further explains seeds from several plants.
Broccoli is generally the only one within this species that is what is called an annual. The other ones are biennial, meaning they take 2 years to come to seed. Now, this is an annual, so we'll get the seed in 1 year, specifically for the broccoli that comes to a head. The heading broccoli is an annual. And for home gardening, you want to save seed. Here's the thing. If you only save seed from one plant, you'll get plenty. I mean, you'll get more than enough seeds for your little homestead, probably from one plant. But the problem is, if you don't take seeds from several plants, you end up having this genetic problem. The sphere, it becomes like a, it comes down to a head, and you begin to lose genetic information, and in time it can actually cause trouble to your crop. So in this situation, you want to actually save seed from a minimum for saving for your home from about 20 to 50 different plants. And so you realize saving seed is it's a real serious decision to make. Now, hey, if you can only save from 1 or 2 or 3, you do what you can. But the reality is, in the long run, if you want to keep up the genetic diversity within your plants, you want to save for home gardening for a minimum of about 20 different plants, or else you get this kind of genetic bottlenecking or genetic atrophy or entropy, or where you begin to lose the genetic information, and that can actually cause damage to future crops.
He recommends taking seeds from 20 plants to protect the genetic diversity. Chad further explains growing seeds.
Right now, I am right in front of my dried broccoli seeds. How do you go about saving seeds from your brassicas? The broccoli is part of the species called Brassica oleracea. Now, here's the thing. Broccoli happens to be a part of this species, but so is also Brussels sprouts and cabbage and kale and collards and kohlrabi. And you may say, okay, they're all part of the same species. Who cares? I mean, who cares about those Latin words? Here's the thing. Here's the reason it's important. Because if you try to save seed in the same area, within proximity to each other, if you're trying to save seeds from broccoli, kale, cauliflower, these kind of things, and they're near each other, since they're in the same species, they're actually going to potentially pollinate each other, and now you're going to have a Frankenstein brassica. You don't know what's going to come out next. And so that would be what's considered a hybrid. When you take two different things of the same species, you end up pollinating one with the other, and the next generation, you might not know exactly what will come out. And so you want to make a good distance between your plants. Before I tell you how to actually get the seeds, what I want you to see is the process of what you have to go through to actually grow your plant. You want to grow it just like you'd grow a normal broccoli plant, and then you actually want it to grow beyond the nice head like you have. Normally you see that beautiful head ready to eat. You just want to cut it off and you want to eat it. But in this situation, you actually let it continue to grow past so it doesn't look so good. So notice what it looks like. So here you have your first one. It's just beyond where you'd normally want it. And then we move from there to it grows even further. And at this point, it's getting close, maybe even flowering a little bit. But now we move on to look what happens when it's really flowering. Here it is starting to flower, but that's not serious yet. But then look at this. Oh man, isn't that glorious? It's beautiful yellow flowers, man. God's amazing, right? The things that He made for us. And just before they go to seed, they become the most beautiful that they could be, right? So once they go on past the flower stage, then you get to this stage where you actually have the dried seed heads. Now, some of these you might be able to see are still green. Those ones are not quite ready for harvesting. But then you have other ones like these that are fully ready to harvest. And I want you to get a little idea of what it looks like. If you take one of these seeds and you literally can just begin to open it up and they just begin to fall right out into your hand. The seeds come out very simple. You can just let them drop right out into your hand, and you see these little black, gorgeous seeds that almost perfectly circular, or spherical rather. Not perfectly, but quite spherical. As we already said, you can't have things within the same the same species growing too close together in flowering at the same time. That's the problem. Now they can grow close. You can grow all of the different brassicas at the same time. That's not a problem. But you want to make sure that when the flowers are coming out, that only one of the varieties is flowering at the same time. And so one year maybe you'll do your broccoli, another year maybe you'll do your kale, and you get the idea. And so then you could save extra seeds for years to come. Now, the distance that you want to keep them apart is somewhere between 800 feet and a half mile if they are flowering at the same time. Now, I guess I do have that distance. If I grew it right at the front of my property, I could get within the 800 feet distance. And since I have a forest between this open area and the region that I cleared in the front of the property where we're growing some things, I could actually do 2 brassicas in the same year. And if you have, you know, maybe 20 acres plus, you could probably do the same thing. But in general, with a very small homestead of maybe 2 to 5 acres, you probably would be wanting to grow one. You can grow all of them, but you only want to let one of them go to seed. So you got to harvest the Brussels sprouts, or you got to harvest the cabbage or kale or what have you, and don't let them go, except for one of them, whatever one you want to go to seed.
Chad recommends avoiding collecting seeds from the same species at the same time. He recommends 800 feet distance apart if you're seeding brassicas at the same time, such as broccoli. Lynn Gillespie is of the Living Farm, and she explains types of seeds.
So there's a lot of confusion as to what seeds to buy and which seeds are safe. So growing the right varieties of seeds can really make your garden successful. So first let's talk about the different types of seeds that are available to us. First is the open pollinated or the non-hybrid seeds. They're pretty much the same. And these seeds will pollinate themselves and reproduce true to the parent. So if you like to save seeds from your plants, then the open pollinated or non-hybrids are the seeds for you to grow. Also, if you save the seeds from your very best plants year after year, you will actually develop a strain of that plant that will be well adapted to your specific yard. That's kind of a cool thing to do there. The next one is heirloom seeds. So heirloom seeds are the open pollinated or the non-hybrids, but these are varieties that have been passed down from generation to generation. And you can save the seeds from the heirloom plants to grow again and again. All right, hybrid seeds, these are seeds that are cross-pollinated to get a more robust plant with more disease resistance and more yield. And these are not GMO seeds, they are just cross-pollinated with the same plant species. Okay, the next category is organic seeds. And these are seeds that are grown and processed following the USDA organic standards. And the organic seeds are grown without the use of synthetic fertilizers and or pesticides, and they are not genetically engineered. But they can be a hybrid or a non-hybrid. All right, treated seeds. These are seeds that have a coating on them, a chemical, that's usually a fungicide or a pesticide. And any seed that is treated should have the chemical listed on the package. But if your seeds are bright pink or bright blue, those are treated seeds. Those are the chemicals on them. There are some organic treatments for seeds. Sometimes you can buy one that's treated and organic. And the treatment on the seeds is to prevent soil-borne diseases from killing your little seedlings. I personally don't use treated seeds. I just wait for the soil temperature to be warm enough, and then the seeds seem to be able to grow just fine without treatment. Okay, and the last category is the GMO seeds. GMO is genetically modified organisms, and these are crops that have been modified in the laboratory. Like they can cross species when they're got them in the laboratory. As far as I know, a home gardener can't buy GMO seeds for their gardens at this time. But GMO food might be in your food supply. Here's the crops, GMO crops that I know of to date that are in our food supply. Soybeans, corn, field and sweet, canola, cotton, alfalfa, sugar beets, summer squash, papayas, apples, bananas, rice, and potatoes. So my personal choice is not to consume any of the GMO crops or any animals that have eaten a GMO crop. The way to avoid this is to make sure that you're eating organic, because like if a banana is organic, it's not going to be a GMO banana. I really don't think there's been enough testing done on the health effects of GMO foods, so I'm not willing to be their guinea pig and consume those or feed them to my family.
Lynn explains there are open pollinated or non-hybrid plants. You want to save seeds from the best plants. And she explains heirloom seeds and hybrid seeds and organic seeds and how they're different. And that there are treated seeds, which have a coating that makes them look pink or blue. And then there are GMO seeds. So you can see there are quite a few different kinds of seeds. And it's important to understand the right kind of plants, the right kind of seeds, and the right process on how to save seeds properly. By learning how to save seeds, you can not only save money from buying seeds, but you can ensure that you will have the best of the variety that you like from year to year and won't have to be dependent on a store when you might not have supply chain availability, or maybe you can't buy and sell. So seed saving is an important thing to learn how to do. To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.